Hello, everyone. I thought I would continue today with our cosmic perspective and look at some things that I feel are very pertinent to our planet at this time. So, in a way, it's kind of down to earth, but cosmically speaking. I wish to begin by reading to you from an article I wrote in um, 2014 on my Island in the Stream website blog. It's a little long, but I just feel that it's so important at this time to review this, and then I'd like to make some comments on it. So in reading the article, I decided it was time to sit down with my inner planes mentor of many years, Thoth Hara, and ask him some personal, some potent, some potential. I'll get the word eventually. No, it's not. It's pertinent. Ask him some pertinent questions concerning the major shift we are now individually and globally experiencing, which needed to include something about our origins as a human species. Since 1967, and directly from Thoth since 1977, I have received a great deal on all of this, but piecemeal. It is scattered through the years of my material, and there were a lot of missing pieces. So the following is my attempt to gain from Thoth a brief overview of it all. This is not by any means a complete picture on these topics. I imagine a book could be written in answer to each of these questions presented below, but not likely by me. I know that there are other channels out there who have said a great deal about these topics. Some agree with my Akashic Thoth insights, and some do not. 'Tis the way of the world. Each person must come to their own conclusions. And so I begin with the question, where do human beings come from genetically? They are presently a combination of star lineages and genetically bred Homo sapiens. In brief, how did they come about on this planet? Originally, worlds from Rigel and Orion seeded the higher realm or lotus of what is now the Earth. Thoth speaks of the lotus as this pre-birthing dawn reality that birthed the planet as we understand it today. They developed from plant-like in appearance, jellyfish-like in appearance, yet high spirit beings into more human-like forms. They descended into the lotus through the inscription of light for Earth. Each world domain contains an inscription of light, which is co-signed with all elementation of that world's domain or planet. The caveman template, Adam Kedmon, is the true human design and outpictured from the Earth's inscription of life. It is from this template that the first lotus humans developed into more human-like beings. This was an intended process, but in order for it to occur, the envelope of light of this planet had to change, to become less, shall we say, etheric. At a certain moment of vulnerability, some of the children of light existing in the ether of Earth impulsed to build a more physical creation within it. Understand that what you call physical is simply a more magnetic energy within the universal hologram. It draws strongly upon souls to create, to form, to develop out of the clay. Some of the children of light were sorely tempted to move deeper into the creation in the clay, while others intended to hold a creational matrix within the lotus and not move into the deeper levels of elementation. This created a division of world envelopes. Those who chose descent into matter had to separate from the inscription of light in order to create a sub-template for their own purposes. Yet this could not truly eradicate the inscription of light, for it is still there, largely dormant in the DNA. The Nephilim. We use this biblical term as it comes from the Hebraic nephesh, or elemental soul, that part which returns to the earth after life transition, death, while the spirit soul ascends into the next revolution. The Nephilim were incarnated beings in human-like forms from other worlds. They arrived in Merkaba starships. This story has largely been told associated with the Anunnaki of Sitchin's lore. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Anunnaki. Well, we'll let it ride for now. Much of this telling is correct, some is not, but much more is simply missing, and therefore the larger perspective cannot be attained until more of this history comes forth. The Nephilim chose the role of separation, yet some have come through that fire and are now working to clear this action. My question, are you implying that the Nephilim are elemental souls? Thoth, no, they feed that elementation. They dwell upon it and work through it. They are not of it. Beyond the Hebrew nephesh is the Atlantean nephel, those who borrow the elemental souls to do their bidding. This is another topic, but in Atlantis there were disincarnate beings who would take hold of elemental souls once the spiritual soul had transitioned. They would then use the energy for a period until they could no longer operate within it. They could only use the nephesh that had not been nourished by the spiritual soul. Those nourished are strong and vibrant. This all took place toward the end of Atlantis as it succumbed to a darker influence and caused certain portals to be opened that should not have been undone. But back to the topic of the Nephilim. Yes, the Anunnaki did create a genetic slave species, but this species was not the human you are today. However, some Anunnaki wished to correct this wrong by uplifting the slave species and giving them the seed of light through their own genetics. These are the free Nephilim we speak of that turned back toward the light, opened their inscription of their planet, and poured it into the Earth's slave species. But this was not the final transformation. Also on this earth, from out of the lotus, came the ones from Orion, Rigel, and other true stars of that space realm, as well as their kindred from the Pleiades and Sirius, and some other of the kindred. These beings encouraged and aided the free Nephilim to generate the Earth's light program, and in the process, so they also injected their DNA into the forming human species of Earth. So I say, tell me more about the beings who carry out their agendas through what you call the architects. Or are they the architects themselves? Who really are the architects? Thoth, the architects are very ancient in the earth. As beings, they developed in the epoch of Eros, the time of substantiation. They were at first a mix of star seed and elemental, realm of fairies, gnomes, etc. They broke away and formed their own evolutionary pod. They chose to live underground in caves, which were much more vast and closer to the surface in those days. They were highly intelligent, but became more and more focused on what you might now call personal ambition, but could be seen as a survival of the incarnated condition and associative world focus. In other words, these guys didn't want to die. They didn't want to transition. They didn't want to evolve in that particular way. They wanted to hold on to what they were obtaining, collecting in the world around them, and they wanted to survive in that world. As time passed, they began to come to the surface of the planet, but lived apart from the masses. Their hearing is acute, and in the darkness their eyesight is also, but their eyes are very light sensitive. The architects developed a propensity and talent for building, developing, creating things of the world, which they will sustain and guard at all costs. Eventually they intermarried with more human beings, but this did not occur frequently until about 6,000 years ago. It wasn't until the 17th century, however, that they began to truly take hold of the world dimension, building and controlling physical empires within it. The architects have also created their own subfamily that is part of the human race. This breeding is always very selective, often unbeknownst to those whom they choose to breed with, which is an important point. They wish to integrate a certain amount of active light genetics, but carefully paired with the Kabbalah, as they call it, the righteous. This is false righteous. This is a false righteous. To them it means those who stand by the law they created eons before, a law of right to rule. Their doctrine follows alongside Hebraic Christian doctrine. It strongly influences Christian doctrine today, as to much extent controls it, both Catholic and Protestant. So this subfamily we have referred to you in the past as the anti-Grail or dark Grail family, the true Grail family being descended from the Venusian Melchizedek through Mu, Atlantis, Egypt, Albion, and finally through the bloodlines of Yeshua or Jesus. But the anti-Grail family take many of the Grail symbols and logica as their own, such as the right to rule. Note, logica is a Thoth-speak word meaning to create a system to contain certain logic, a system to contain and work through a specific logic form. In this case, the dark Grail family uses the logica to distort the use of the logic of the true Grail family for their own agenda. There are those off-world entities who influence and aid the architects in their world agenda. This is not a topic we wish to elaborate upon at this time. So then I ask, at this juncture, I have to ask about the new Pope Francis. He seems like a true apostle of light. Why is he being allowed to be the Pope and say what he is saying to the world? Thoth, there is much to this story, and we state here only that the foundation of the Catholic Church can no longer stand as a mechanism of the dark Grail. That time has come to an end. Now the remaining facade is crumbling, although there is still some struggle within to keep it intact. Then I ask, all the seemingly bad and scary things happening now for the earth, Fukushima, radiation, GMOs, genetic manipulation, how should we be perceiving this? Everything that is happening on the earth is leading to the next level of spiritual fulfillment. Radiation is not bad. It is part of nature. All living things on this planet will adapt to the changes the earth is undergoing. In the process of such change, there will be a change of skins, of outer form, what you call death and mutation, but this will pass into a beautiful transformation. The mutation of food also will lead to a purer substance for the body, in that humans will turn to a means of energy for their bodies that take them away from genetically modified and polluted foods. And I ask, why do many people, including myself, feel more and more an unreality in this current time frame, as if we are already in the new earth? The hologram is shifting for earth and its inhabitants. It is transforming into the new earth hologram. The more this shift occurs, the greater it bears upon the senses and becomes real to the perceptions of human cognition. When the senses attempt to compare this new reality with what they see and hear around them, the latter seems the more dissociative to them. It is fading away and being replaced by the hologram of the new earth. How can we continue to be present with the present and yet stay connected to the new earth and its now merging into our beings? Do not resist the process. The human logica is in a place to hold onto reality, to retain rational thinking through adhering to the status quo. Up is up and down is down. It is like the inner ear. If you upset its referencing, your whole world spins out of control. It will take some time to adjust, but the referencing will change gradually so that you can still operate in the old and the new assumes the real for you. Relax into it, and you will become more mutable with the transition. Ride the wave instead of struggling against it. I'm going to just pause here and say, I just wrote another short article, and I'm going to reference here just in saying that it's also, though, equally important to be present to what's going on here and now. He's not suggesting that you not be. He's only saying that allow the process to move you to integrate both worlds so that you can be present here more fully because you've integrated the new earth consciousness. That's what it takes to be present here now, especially now. What is happening will happen to the large majority of the population of this planet that is still so asleep to the reality of all this coming upon us now and sweeping us toward a disintegration of the old Earth, and as the new Earth star hologram assumes the planetary spectrum. They will pass from the incarnational cycle of the Earth into one that matches the frequency they choose to remain in. This means that they will begin to have much shorter spans in current embodiment. However, there will be those among them who will awaken suddenly, as if from a bad dream, and become candlelights for the world. Their symbol will be a black candle lit with a violet flame. They will arise then as the Naphala, meaning in essence those who return the flame of the light bearer, Lucifer, to the world. Now that last is interesting. I don't know how symbolic he's speaking there or how, literal. People would be walking around with black candles or violet flames, or he's speaking of this, as an intrinsic part of the inner light spectrum nature. But I liked what he called the light bearer. Instead of Lucifer, it's Lucifer, Luce, and then capital I, and then Faer, which is light of the fairies, kind of, in a way. It's elemental light. Okay, so let's just take a look at what all this means here for a moment in regard to our current 2016 time frame. So in 2016, we have really, really, really come a long way since I wrote that article in 2014. Why am I saying that? Mainly because I am seeing, and I believe we are all seeing, around the world, things crumbling. The old world paradigm is crumbling big time, and it's doing so by sticking out so outrageously in so many ways and being found out in so many ways. And you thinking, oh my God, how awful, how horrible, but it was always there. The good thing is it's coming out. It's showing itself. They're getting panicky. They're doing things that are more extreme so that they can hold on, hold on. We're speaking about the energy and the influence of the architects. The architect's bloodline is running through a lot of these persons who are in this paradigm. The architects themselves, what we can call it with a big A, the architects that Thoth is speaking about, I don't think show their face very often. If at all these days. But their minions do, who are out of their seed, who are part of their genetic makeup and mixed with light quanta to make them more saleable to the planet. And, it's not like, there's one thing that Thoth cautions me about when speaking of this, and I really want to pronounce it here drastically. We can't go around pointing fingers at people and saying, oh, they're the seed of the devil. Don't talk to them. They don't deserve to be here with us. It's not like that. No, no, no. We're all human beings. I don't care what seeds we have in us. We're here on the planet. We've been planted on the planet. We're here to be one people and one nation. Any human being on this planet, I don't care who it is, has a seed of light, has a seed of divinity. And that seed can prosper. All we have to do is give it love, understanding, discipline, and by discipline I don't mean trying to take over their lives, but discipline in the sense of not giving in to some kind of status quo that they've created that's actually a form of slavery. So discipline and also recognition. Recognition of what doesn't work in them and what does work. And I'm not talking about personal judgments. I'm speaking about obvious things, like there shouldn't be serial killers, right? Everybody agrees on that except perhaps other serial killers. So things that are obvious, we can say, no, this is not a correct way to behave as an enlightened spiritual human being. We're not nitpicking. We're talking about the big items on the table. But at the same time, we can look at that person personally, and we can say, but that being has a divine seed in there. I'm going to call that divine seed forth. It's not like doing an exorcism where you tell the evil spirit to leave. You're doing an not an exorcism, but an insorcism. I can't say the word. No wonder I can't say it. It's not a word, but you're bringing it in. You're drawing it out. You're bringing it forth. And you're doing so by commanding that love and absolutely refuting aloud and with your whole being the negative aspects of what they're trying to propose and put before you and on you. You have to do both. If you start making everybody a bad guy, and that's all you're doing, you're just sinking right down into the mire with them. So there has to be a balance between those two things. And I'm not saying that I achieve that all the time by any means, but I really recognize it, and I know that that's what has to be done. And so I'm going to say it again. I've been saying it a lot lately, but hey, I'm going to say it again. One of the things that is really important right now is for us light workers to put our hands into the matter. And as Jesus spit in the clay to heal the blind man's eyes, he stooped down to the earth. He didn't have to do that. He could have just blinked at the guy and then he would have been able to see again, But no, he stooped down. He spit in the clay, in the dirt that he put between his hands. He spit in it. The human element, the DNA mixed with the earth of the planet. He rubbed his hands together and he placed this clay on the blind man's eyes to heal him. Boy, what does that tell us? Take a look at it. My mother brought that to my attention when I was a child. She didn't say all that I'm saying about it here. But she said to me, and often through my life, she'd say, well, you've got to spit in the clay. You've got to spit in the clay. You've got to take that action. You can't just sit there all high and mighty and say, oh, this is how it should be. You have to spit in the clay. And it's time for us to do that right now. Pucker up, bend a knee, get that dirt in your hands and spit in the clay. And then place it on the eyes of the blind through your heart-centered beingness and through your words and your actions. And in doing so, I'm going to say, if you're going to spit in the clay, a good place to start, for Americans anyway, is with this presidential election coming up. I truly, honestly believe that by bringing Bernie Sanders into the White House, along with his grassroots movement, not the man alone can't do much of anything, as he has said. He stated that. But the whole grassroots movement behind him, with him, the moment is now. The Inner Light Network is in place, has told me. The old realm is crumbling. They've semi-crumbled before and let light shine through, but this time it's the big crumble because there's not that much time left before the ascension principles start kicking in with the Pyramidus Radius matrix, the new hologram that's being created. It's the time. They're not going to have time to recoup. If they crumble now and we get a light worker in the White House, and a conscious light worker in the White House, and his whole grassroots movement behind him. I shouldn't say his movement. He's stimulating it, but it's our movement. It's the people's movement. It's nonviolent. It represents the intrinsic qualities of a Martin Luther King, of a John and Robert Kennedy, and deep down in his heart, also Barack Obama. But unfortunately, he didn't come in through the donations of tiny little human beings. He came in through bigger money, and he had to stick to that if he wanted to live to see tomorrow, and his family as well. So his hands were pretty well tied. You notice now that they sort of turned him loose because he's not in the running anymore. He's coming out more. Someone even said on the news, it sounds like it sounded like Barack Obama's last union speech, State of the Union speech. It sounded like he was channeling Bernie Sanders. One of the newsmen actually said that because in his heart of hearts, that's where he really wants to be. But Bernie is there. He hasn't taken any big money. He's not going to take any big money. He can't be bought. He's got thousands and thousands of people behind him already, and more to come. So I'm not waxing political here. This has nothing to do with politics. That's why I'm saying it. It has nothing to do with politics. in politics is the status quo. Before you know it, I'm praying on this planet, we won't have politics anymore. Whoever comes into play helping us to nourish and guide and guard this planet will do so under a new format. I don't know what that format's going to be, but it's not going to be a political one, not as we know it. So that's what I say. And now here's a short video I'd like you to watch with me. It's not long.
It'll probably start on a Friday.
Whoops.
The banks.
I'm going to hold it for a minute while I make my little speech here. I found this on the internet, and this is a scene from the new X-Files. It's a series of 6, they're calling it an event, because it's only 6 episodes that they're putting out, at least for now. I have a feeling they're testing the waters for a whole new series of X-Files. And I plan to watch it all. I haven't even watched the first one yet. But this is an excerpt from the first one. And the title of this video says, Exposes Elite's Genocidal Plan from Global Banking Collapse to Avian Deception. Now, this is really amazing that they are doing this, that they are putting this in a television series, and they are being so explicit. They're getting by with it. We have to remember that back in the days when, what was that movie? Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out, way back in the 1970s. I think it was 79 or something. David Spielberg, the producer, many years later, told us this, that at the time, before he actually launched the making of the movie, but had the script and was ready to go, he was approached by the United States government. I can't remember if he said which agency, if it was the CIA or what, to not make Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Well, he told them he was going to make it, and he did, and he lived through it. So that's great, I mean, there was a brave man, and he put it out. That's nothing now. I mean, it's not controversial in the least. No government official would bother trying to stop something like that nowadays. But just look at how far we have come to where now we can put out something like this, which would never have even dreamed, no one would ever have dreamed to dare try to put something out like this now. I mean, then, way back then, even if they knew about it. Okay, so here we go. It's very enlightening.
Will announce a security action necessitating their computers to go offline all weekend.
Digital money will disappear.
They can just steal your money?
Hey guys, you're not going to want to miss this one. So, The X-Files is back, and part 1 of the 2-part premiere aired tonight after the AFC NFL Championship game, and I wanted to record it. I'm going to jump to the chase real quickly here. Number 1, we talk a lot about disclosure. What does the government know? What hidden technologies does the secret government have? Black projects, $8.5 trillion missing from the Pentagon. Catherine Austin Fitts talks about it a lot, as does Joseph P. Farrell. We know that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes in the banking world and in the top secret off-book black budget program. How many of the UFOs people see around the world are actually of terrestrial origin? I'm going to play 2 absolute must-watch clips here. In the first clip, Mulder, played by David Duchovny, and a journalist played by Joel McHale are shown a terrestrial UFO that was reverse engineered from a found UFO, of course going back to Area 51. Watch this.
It's running on toroidal energy, so-called zero-point energy, simply the energy of the universe.
You're talking about free energy?
That we've had since the 40s. No fuel, no flame, no combustion. Simple electromagnetic field. Technology kept secret for 70 years while the world ran on petroleum.
Oil companies making trillions.
What I'm going to show you next is the most unbelievable part.
Gravity warp drive, but how?
Element 115, Ununpenti.
Where did you get it?
This warrants a little bit of exploration and explanation. I would imagine for most X-File fans, Element 115 is something they're probably familiar with, but for those who have forgotten, Element 115 is an element that Bob Lazar, back in 1989, famous Area 51 whistleblower Bob Lazar, claimed was the element responsible for terrestrial UFOs. It's the element that powered the UFOs. And what's absolutely crazy about that 1989 claim is that just recently, in the past couple of years, Element 115 was officially added to the table of periodic elements along with the atomic numbers of 113, 117, and 118. Now in this next clip, we need to talk about what the elite like to do, which is to hide in plain sight, to tell us exactly what they're going to do before they do it. I won't say another word. Listen to this.
Why do such a thing and lie about it? Our own government.
Your own government lies as a matter of course, as a matter of policy. The Tuskegee experiments on black men in the 30s, Henrietta Lacks.
What are they trying to do?
That's the missing piece.
But it's not hard to imagine a government hiding, hoarding alien technology for 70 years at the expense of human life and the future of the planet. Driven not only by corporate greed, but a darker objective.
The takeover of America.
And then the world itself, by any means necessary, however violent, or cruel, or efficient. By severe drought, brought on by weather wars, conducted secretly using aerial contaminants and high-altitude electromagnetic waves, in a state of perpetual war. To create problem, reaction, solution scenarios to distract, enrage, and enslave American citizens at home. With tools like the Patriot Act and the National Defense Authorization Act, which abridge the Constitution in the name of national security. The militarization of police forces in cities across the U.S., the building of prison camps by the Federal Emergency Management Agency with no stated purpose, the corporate takeover of food and agriculture, pharmaceuticals and healthcare, even the military in clandestine agendas to fatten, dull, sicken, and control a populace already consumed by consumerism.
And I encourage you all to go shopping more.
A government that taps your phone, collects your data, and monitors your whereabouts with impunity. A government preparing to use that data against you when it strikes. And the final takeover begins.
The takeover of America.
By a well-oiled and well-armed multinational group of elites that will cull, kill, and subjugate.
Happening as we sit here.
It's happening all around us.
The other shoe waiting to drop.
It'll probably start on a Friday. The banks will announce a security action necessitating their computers to go offline all weekend.
Digital money will disappear,
They can just steal your money?
followed by the detonation of strategic electromagnetic pulse bombs to knock out major grids.
What will seem like an attack on America by terrorists or Russia.
Or a simulated alien invasion, using alien replica vehicles that exist and are already in use.
An alien invasion of the U.S.
The Russians tried it in 47.
You can't say these things.
I'm going to say them tomorrow.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed these clips. Share them. I think it's important. Basically, truth has gone mainstream. One wonders what would motivate a script like this, and even beyond that, what would have allowed a script like this to get approved for production, unless they're warning us all about what they plan to do. Thanks for watching, and for real news 24/7, visit us over at sgtreport.com.
Well, that's pretty dark and dreary, but you know, it could happen. That's the plan. It's what is on the table by the architects to take place, more or less. You know, there might be some details missing or added here and there, but that's the big picture. However, that's not the whole picture. It's only the big picture to the side of those who want to make it a total reality. The other side of the picture, as we've been talking about, is coming from the light beings, from our mentors, from those who seeded us and helped us before as a race. When there were just little slave beings running around, they came in and gave us the genetics we needed to bring us up, lift us up into the light. They haven't left us. They're still with us. They never left. And now they're putting things into place to help us much, much further. But they can only help us so far as our vibration allows them. We are lifting our vibration to meet them in the sky, so to speak. And that's when we will leave this very, very thin but concentrated vibrational spectrum, this bandwidth that's so, so tiny and thin but powerful, behind. We'll leave it behind. It may be powerful, but only in its tiny little perimeter. And when we leave it behind, it's gone. So no matter how severe that truth is that you just saw on the video, let's take heart from the message that Bernie Sanders gave us in the following video that I want to show you. I just clipped a segment of it, so it's like less than a minute, I think, or 1 minute's worth right here. So I clipped out this little segment of a video. Y'all may have already seen it. I put it up on my website, but it's so short. It's a very good thing to end with in regard to ending this topic about the agenda of the architects and how easy it would be to just flip the coin. Just flip the coin.
Is all over this country. You got a lot of bright, decent, good people. They're saying, you know what? The situation is hopeless. You can't beat the Koch brothers. You can't beat the billionaires. You can't win. I'm giving up. That is exactly what they want us to believe. And I beg of you, do not enter that world of despair.
That's it. Do not enter that world of despair. So I thank you once again for listening and watching. And may you have a wonderful day and a wonderful future. May we all have that. Share it together. Aloha.